My name is Parasaran Rangarajan, and I am the Editor-in-Chief for the International Law Journal of London. Today we are with Hon'ble MP Mr. Yashwant Sinha, former External Affairs Minister of India and also former Finance Minister of India. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's. And
Same to you.
we see your history and service to India, started very early after independence. Could you provide a brief explanation of the international relations at that time and the founding of the non-aligned movement, as well as its growth, as well as the difficulty of entering IAS compared to today?
Well, the international situation was complex. You had the Cold War at that point of time, and there were post-Second World War problems which had not been fully tackled, and they also needed attention. Then you had the problems in India. It was a developing economy, an economy which had been newly independent economy of a newly independent country, and there were all kinds of issues at that point of time. There were countries which were straining at trying to get their independence. There was apartheid in South Africa, and even in the US there were difficulties. So it was a complex global situation, and it is a credit to the genius of mankind that gradually those problems were overcome and we were able to move forward. As far as the IAS is concerned, yes, it was a very difficult examination, and it was a great achievement, considered a great achievement in those days to get into the Indian Administrative Service. Very few people managed to get into the service in those days, and so I was lucky to have managed to do that.
Yes, you have served the country very proudly. One of your first positions was on drafting the committee of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Could you expand the role you had and developing countries such as India in association with other international entities such as the World Bank's IMF, etc., both in the past and present?
You see, what happened was, it was after about 20 years in the Indian Administrative Service that I was posted as Joint Secretary in the Government of India, and I started looking after shipping. And it was in that capacity that I represented my country, led my country's delegation to the United Nations Conference on Shipping in Geneva. And there I was elected the chairman of the drafting committee. We had almost a month-long discussion on various issues relating to international shipping, and the drafting committee was supposed to capture the essence of the discussion, the conclusions, and the consensus, and then put it across to the general body. And it was after its approval that it was included in the joint communique which was issued at the end of the meeting. So it was very important, very sensitive work with which I was charged at Geneva in this conference, and it was a very good learning experience. Additionally, as Joint Secretary Shipping, I also represented India in the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, which was based in London.
Right.
And that gave me international exposure. I had worked earlier in the Ministry of Commerce, that is foreign trade in the Government of India, and that had also given me international exposure. So when I became the Finance Minister of India subsequently, I had all this experience and equipment to deal with, and dealing with therefore World Bank and IMF was not a problem for me, and I was able to get along with my colleagues from other countries and also with the officials of these two organizations.
I see, and the committee still plays a big role in developing India today, correct?
Which committee?
The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development.
That is, it's an ongoing exercise.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and you had also held the position of Consul General of India in West Germany, as it was known at that time. How will you say that India's relations with European nations have grown or changed? Because you have mentioned yourself that we are losing clout in Western areas, and how much does Indian foreign policy place importance on European nations beyond the economic field? Is there a strategic relationship between India and European nations today?
Now we are trying to build a strategic relationship. The relationship with Europe, the European nations, was largely economic at one point of time. The economic content of our relationship continues to be very important even today. But the relationship with many countries is now becoming richer because we are covering, apart from the economic and political issues, the strategic issues also. And therefore, this kind of relationship enables you to play a bigger role with your friends in the global community of nations.
Right. And yes. After entering politics, switching from bureaucracy, you held a number of prestigious positions, including, like you said, Finance Minister of India and also External Affairs Minister of India under former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. And many have pointed out that India had a much stronger foreign policy at that time, as the Prime Minister even conducted a nuclear test, opposing Western nations. How do you compare the strength of foreign policy during Vajpayee's era to Congress Party today? And why has India not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty? And do you ever see India joining the International Criminal Court?
You are absolutely right in saying that we gave notice to the world through the nuclear tests which were carried out within weeks of our assuming office in 1998. And the world was not pleased. They imposed the economic and other sanctions on us. We held our ground, and ultimately the rest of the world was forced to withdraw the sanctions and become friendly with India. So this is what we have done. And throughout our tenure of 6 years, we dealt with the world on an honorable basis. And from Maldives to the US, we considered all countries of the world equal partners for India in the global community. So the foreign policy was based on national interest, our understanding of national interest, and also the global circumstances which were obtaining then. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, that is not the case today, but I leave it at that. There are any number of examples to show that we are not being taken seriously by the international community today as we were when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. In fact, that was the time when India truly arrived at the global high tables, literally and otherwise. So that was a very, very satisfying period for me personally, both as Finance Minister as well as the Minister for External Affairs. There was another question that you had asked.
Yes, why has not India signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and do you ever see India joining International Criminal Court?
We have a basic objection to the NPT. The NPT makes a division or distinction between the haves and the have-nots. It does not treat all countries equally, and therefore India has right from the beginning been opposed to this treaty. That continues to be our position even today, and it's the same thing as far as the CTBT is concerned. We have also not signed the International Criminal Court. We don't want to become a member of that system, which also is not based on equality and equity.
Right. Earlier this year, as a standing MP, you brought up the plight of the Tamils from Sri Lanka in Indian Parliament. You know, something which has been gaining attention due to allegations of war crimes, a very legal topic. And in that speech, you implicated Government of India Army personnel by I think specific names. Could you recapitulate what you had mentioned, and why has not India taken a stronger stand on this international human rights issue, as they have termed it a genocide. I think the government of India has recently termed it a genocide, a very specific legal term.
Well, under the pressure of some regional parties in the Tamil Nadu state of India, the government of India did take a position in the Human Rights Commission meeting, which was held in Geneva, I think, earlier this year. But as I said in my speech in Parliament, Government of India is unable to take a stronger position because Government of India was complicit in what was in the genocide which was done in Sri Lanka during the Ilam War. And I had also mentioned that India was engaged in general elections at that time, and the Sri Lankan authorities had very cleverly planned the whole operation in such a manner that public opinion in India would not be as alive to the issue as it would have been otherwise in other circumstances, because everyone was concerned only with elections at that point of time. And Government of India was fully informed. They knew what was happening, but they chose to ignore it, and they chose to ignore it because they were complicit in what was going on.
Can you say who was complicit, perhaps?
The UPA government was complicit.
The entire UPA government?
Yes.
Okay, and you believe it's a genocide?
Well, I do believe that the Tamils were massacred, and even today there is no political settlement worthwhile. And, there is an international definition of genocide, just as there is a definition of recession in the economy. But in common parlance, the manner in which the Tamils were butchered, one has no hesitation in saying that it was genocide.
Okay. And still on that issue, what do you feel that the government of India should do today to hold the alleged war criminals, namely the Rajapaksa family, responsible? Also, you mentioned that the foreign policy of India and the policy of BJP might change from supporting a united Sri Lanka, as you stated, Tamileelam is not far away, comparing to referendums held in South Sudan, East Timor, etc. Do you feel that BJP will shift its policy due to the atrocities that they have faced in spite of remedial sovereignty? I think the U.S. Secretary of State has endorsed this because it could perhaps be a buffer for India in the Indian Ocean. And how worried should India be about China in Sri Lanka?
United Sri Lanka. We do not want the country to split up. We have Tamileelam, but if the Sri Lankan government were to avoid a political settlement of the Tamil issue, then Tamileelam cannot be ruled out. Having said that, I will only say that if the BJP-led government were to come in power, we will revive our earlier policy of Sri Lanka. Work with the Sri Lankan government, will put pressure on the Sri Lankan government to go for a political settlement. Both the parties were very close to a political settlement when the talks were going on. And the fact that it has been eliminated, the opposition has been eliminated by force, does not mean that the issues have gone away. Issues of federalism, issues of the treatment of minorities in Sri Lanka are still very live issues, and they should be tackled. And we'll put whatever pressure we are capable of putting on the Sri Lankan government to abide by the canons of justice and the international norms of human rights.
Okay. And what will be BJP's position on Kashmir, removal of AFSPA, and addressing human rights violations there? Do you ever see India implementing the words of our late founding father Jawaharlal Nehru ji in calling for a UN plebiscite to let the people of Kashmir decide their own fate?
The issue of plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir had a number of preconditions. Pakistan did not fulfill those preconditions, and that is how the whole issue of plebiscite has fallen by the wayside. And now, 67 years down the line, you can't suddenly revive an old proposal and say that there should be a plebiscite. Will the Pakistani army withdraw from Pak-occupied Kashmir? Will Pakistan take back all the settlers that they have settled in Pak-occupied Kashmir? Will they get back from China the 5,000 square kilometers of territory that they illegally handed over to China after they came to this illegal possession of Jammu and Kashmir? I mean, these are conditions which are conditions precedent for any further action in Jammu and Kashmir. So those who talk about the plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir even today forget history and these conditions. The issue is not that. The UN resolutions were overtaken by the Shimla Agreement, and the Shimla Agreement clearly lays down that both sides will talk to each other and arrive at a final settlement of Jammu and Kashmir. That remains pending. Both sides, India and Pakistan, have to talk to each other and arrive at a final settlement. As far as human rights are concerned, we have very well-established procedures and processes in our country to take care of any human rights violation by the army or any armed force of the Union. And from the time to time, if instances come to our notice, we take action against armed personnel.
Right. And do you see yourself becoming External Affairs Minister of India again in the near future if BJP is elected to power as expected? I think you mentioned a few days ago that some were blocking that ministerial berth. And what do you think some of the foreign policy changes needs to be made for India to become a superpower on an international level, not just in its immediate neighborhood, such as becoming a permanent member of the Security Council?
I can't answer that question. In our system, the first part of your question,
right.
In our system, it's the prerogative of the Prime Minister to appoint his ministers and allot portfolios to them. So it is, it's not for me to decide which ministry I'll handle or whether I'll become a minister at all. The second point is India's policies, foreign policy, should be the kind of policy that we had followed when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of India, and I have no hesitation in saying that the path that he has shown should be the path for the BJP to follow even in future. And that is strength with diplomacy with strength. That is what we should do.
Okay. And do you have any final words for your listeners from overseas, the people of India, and also others on how we can improve India in the international arena in both international law and relations?
Well, if we have a strong government in India, in Delhi, then half the work will be done. Other countries will start taking us seriously, and India will be in a position then to make its contribution both to the creation and evolution of international law, as well as staking claim to the permanent membership of the Security Council more strongly, and occupy its rightful position in the Committee of Nations.
Okay. And we thank you very much for your time today, sir, on this New Year's Eve. And we wish you a very happy New Year's. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.